Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It's NFL Week 2. Ian Cameron, Philip Nelson back in the house with me as usual, ready to break down NFL Week 2. Philip, it was just great to have NFL football back. Full disclosure, was an up and down, inconsistent first week of the NFL season, but it's been that way for me in Week 1 the last few years. So really don't panic. This is the only week of the season, too, that the betting lines are available for months. The Week 1 lines come out back in May and June. So this is the only week of the year where the lines are available for months on end. And usually I don't want to, push the envelope in Week 1, try to be more conservative. So that was what helped me a little bit with the up and down results, is that we didn't have a ton of bigger bets on the Week 1 card. But now we get to see each team play and everything play out. We had a lot of everything last week. We had the good, the bad, and the Miami Dolphins in Week 1. But boy, oh, Philip, from a Packers fan, and we'll be leading off with Green Bay in just a moment against Washington in that Thursday nighter. Great start for them, but just great to have football back. The Bills-Ravens game was a regular season classic. I can't say the greatest game of all time or one of, because I usually reserve that for playoff games when everything's on the line, but that's as good a regular season game for sure as you could possibly watch with Ravens and Bills Sunday night. But Week 1 entertaining, Philip, and it was just great to have the NFL back.
Absolutely. Like you said, we saw the good, the bad, and the Miami Dolphins. I think that there was definitely some surprises in there. As you said, Week 1 is always a tough one to call, especially with all these changes and whatnot. I will say, I think I was completely right. I think you were on board with me with the Giants, but boy, issues there in New York. I don't think that that offense is equipped to truly be effective. Ravens, Bills, incredible. I think those are the two titans of the AFC. I think the Packers got my message about cleaning up their shit in the preseason because they looked like a completely different team. But at the same time, just like in our NFL preview, the Lions are not the same team as they were last year. So that's something to watch. JJ McCarthy, I think there's still question marks on him, but what a resilient guy. I turned that thing off at the end of the third quarter because I was tired, had to get up early. But what an incredible game to watch. The next morning and see him be resilient. And that's what you need out of he's not a rookie quarterback, but first year guy. So. Lots to unpack today, and I'm excited to get to it with you.
No doubt. Let's get into it. We will begin with Thursday Night Football. Now, this is the first Amazon Prime Thursday night football game of the season. Of course, NBC always gets that first Thursday night game to open the season, but then it's Amazon Prime every Thursday starting this week with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit on the broadcast. We've got Washington and Green Bay. Green Bay 3-point favorites, 48 the total in this game. Green Bay was extremely impressive. There's no question about that. The thing you have to look at when you're handicapping Week 2, though, Phil, is the fact that do you want to upgrade Green Bay a ton for that performance, or do you want to maybe downgrade Detroit a bit more for that performance? Because there was glaring issues that Detroit had. They couldn't run the football. The interior of their offensive line was definitely a big concern that I had for Detroit going into the season, and it struggled, and Green Bay was just overwhelmed them really on both sides of the football. The offensive line for Green Bay played pretty well, giving Jordan Love time to throw the football down the field. Because really there was not much from Aiden Hutchinson or anybody really on the Detroit pass rush in that game against the Lions. So it was very impressive, both sides of the football. The Packers were in control pretty much from start to finish in that game. I think when you look at the Washington Commanders, they weren't nearly as impressive. Even though they beat the Giants 21-6, there were some weird things in that game. There was a terrible clock management on the final drive before halftime by Dan Quinn that kept points off the board for Washington. There was a good stretch of the second half where the offense bogged down. They didn't really get a whole lot going, and you got to give the Giants defense credit for it. That's the one thing we thought the Giants would be solid, especially in the defensive front, and they kind of put that on display. But at the end of the day, when they needed to put the game away, Jaden Daniels and the Commanders offense was able to do that. No question about that. And like I said, the offense, like I said, got better as the game went on. Now, the offensive line, they did lose multiple linemen in the offseason. They brought in Tunsil. The O-line I thought was okay, not great against the Giants. And if the Green Bay defensive front now with Micah Parsons as part of it, is able to play like they did, is it going to be easy for Washington to move the football? Here's the thing with this matchup. Without the run game, Jared Goff's kind of a sitting duck in the pocket. In this situation, if Green Bay's defensive line is able to get the better of Washington's offensive line, the difference here is Jaden Daniels got that athleticism and that mobility to kind of make you pay for that. So that's going to make this a little bit trickier. This is a really interesting handicap because I liked what I saw from the Packers, but I'm a little bit hesitant in this spot to take them. I'm leaning Green Bay at 3 or better, and this number went to 3.5, and it's come back down to 3. Just before we started recording this, there's been some Washington money, and a lot of them that had Green Bay minus 3.5, it's fallen back down to 3 in this game. At 3, I lean Green Bay, but here's the issue. You're coming off a big-time win to start the year in the division, a Lions team that kicked your ass last year twice. I am worried about a little bit of a hangover spot for Green Bay, even though they don't travel and they're at home. That is a concern for me. Now, usually the road team traveling on a short week on a Thursday night is usually a negative, but I find it's more of a negative later in the season. When you're talking week 12 and onward and you're playing as a road team on Thursday night, that's when the wear and tear of the season and the short week really gets to you. When it's this early in the season and all teams are still relatively healthy and fresh, it's not as bad a spot early in the season for the road teams that get the Thursday nighter. When you're talking November, December, the latter part of the season, I find that's when it's more of a challenge to go on the road and play on a Thursday night. So this is a great game to watch. These are two teams that have the chance to do something in the NFC this year. I don't think there's much debate. What I would lean to, though, is with Washington where it is right now, I don't know if Green Bay is going to win by more than a touchdown. The Washington and under same game teaser in this game, a two team same game teaser is interesting to me here in this game. And another thing too, long term Thursday night games have been lower scoring. I got to admit, I was impressed with Green Bay's defense. The Giants have issues. Russell Wilson not good. The O-line not good. Washington's defense did play well in that game, pretty solid up front. That if we could tease this up to 54, that's not a bad way to go. In my opinion. So like I said, I think 3 or less, I'd lean Green Bay, but I don't think they're blowing out Washington. I don't. And Washington under Quinn has not been bad as a dog, but I'd feel a little more comfortable maybe teasing them up to 9 and the under up to 54. I think if you put that in the teaser, that would be the way to go here for Thursday Night Football, because I think this line is right where it should be right now. And as far as just betting the either side at the current number of 3, like I said, it's a difficult choice to make this early in the season because, like I said, I saw enough of Green Bay, Philip, that I don't want to bet against them, that they look that good. But I think there's a very strong portion of that equation that was a lot of things for Detroit that we were concerned about, losing both coordinators, the offensive line and the interior starting from scratch, a brand new starting center, a rookie in the guard spot. We like Sewell and Decker at the tackles, but that interior of the O-line was a major concern, and they got swallowed up by Green Bay. Was it more great Green Bay or bad Detroit? That's what makes this a tricky handicap. Philip, what do you think here for Thursday night Commanders-Packers?
Yeah, you know what? Going back on that Packers-Lions game, I think that it was a combination of an upgraded Packers team and obviously, like you said, a little bit of a downgraded Lions team. One thing I want to point out, though, there were plays in there, and it's funny for anyone that actually watched it. Boy, anytime Micah Parsons is in there, it seemed like they were covering him exactly every move that he was doing on there. And the one play that Jared Goff's interception doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but Micah Parsons got in there and forced, like we were saying, Jared Goff, once he starts feeling the pressure around him, forces some bad blind throws, and he threw that right into coverage there. And so I think Micah Parsons, I think the Packers game plan here is going to be, let Jordan Love chuck it, try to get a lead and start forcing the other teams to have to turn into drop back situations where Micah Parsons can get after him. Now on the other side of the ball, the Commanders, what scares me about the Commanders is they're a great RPO team. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury is a genius at that. They're good at stretching the field vertically and horizontally. With Deebo Samuel, he made an impact in there. They were able to run the ball with Krosky Merritt. So they did a lot of good things, and to all the viewers out there, watch how Cliff Kingsbury plans on game planning for Micah Parsons here. What you typically do with players like that is you don't try to block them and you try to read them, and I think that's what kind of scares me here, because if all of a sudden they're doing some RPO stuff and even just quarterback read option stuff. If Micah Parsons is the dive guy taking the running back, that's going to leave Jaden Daniels, and he rushed for 68 yards. So I think the Packers defense, this is going to be a challenge here. And I think I really agree with you here. This is going to be a tough one to call here. I would try to tease this up as well. It's funny, before the show, I did see it at 3.5 as well. So, I don't think that the Packers win by more than a touchdown here. So I would probably do all the teases that you said as well. I think that's a good way to go about this game. It's going to be a really interesting game to see if this is going to be more of a defensive battle or if this is going to be a lighten up the scoreboard type of deal thing.
I said it's a fascinating game to watch. I'd be lying if I had a strong opinion on it. At this point in time, like I said, I think, if just from a straight point spread standpoint, 3 or better, it would be Green Bay lean for me. But and I love Green Bay, what they did last week. But part of that, I think, was anti-Detroit and the way they did it. So, like I said, fascinating to see. What's nice is that Jordan Love was able to find some of his receivers. Jaden Reed got involved. Like they still don't have Christian Watson, but Dobbs made some nice catches. Yeah. Obviously, Jaden Reed got involved. Tucker Kraft, the tight end. That was good to see. The passing game, he looked comfortable throwing the football, and he was on with the passing game, which is not always the case with Jordan Love, but it was on Sunday.
And, the Packers didn't really run the ball as well as I expected them to, really.
No.
I know that they were trying, it's a good sign for it. It's a balanced team there. They kept pounding Josh Jacobs, and I know that his largest run was a 15-yarder. I think that came in the third quarter or something, but they stayed true to who they were, and I think that's a good thing for Jordan Love, because he had a few of those questionable throws in there. He almost got picked off twice, but I think that's who Matt LaFleur wants to be, a balanced team offensively, and not have to make Jordan Love play superhero ball until, maybe he gets into that hot streak and he can prove himself during the season. So
I think Washington will look to test the Green Bay or run defense a little bit here, even though obviously it was great against Detroit. Some of that was the weakness of the interior of the Detroit offensive line. So the Kroski Merritt props over rushing yards, and I like Jaden Daniels over rushing yards because I think he's going to have to use his legs. Certainly didn't do it a lot last week against the Giants. He didn't really have to. Like, they were leading pretty much that entire game. It was not really necessary for him to be a runner and be looking to take off as much in that game. So, but I think in this game you might see more of Jaden Daniels running the football and those RPOs, as Philip mentioned. All right, let's turn to Sunday. We've got New England and Miami. I don't think, at least to me, watching all the games, I don't think you could say a team looked worse on both sides of the football than Miami last week. That's how bad it was against Indianapolis. Dolphins 1.5-point home favorites, 43 the total. The problem is the Patriots weren't that good either last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. So something, Mike Vrabel's return to New England this time as head coach. So something's got to give. But I can tell you right now, I downgrade Miami more than I upgrade Indy for that performance last week. And I definitely downgrade Miami more than I downgrade New England. That was inept football. That was disgraceful. That was an embarrassment. That was humiliating. That looked like a team that didn't look like an NFL football team. That didn't look like an NFL defense. That didn't look like an NFL offensive line. And that offensive line for Miami in the preseason was getting beaten. Their starters on the offensive line, there were backups and third stringers offensively on the other side moving the ball against Miami's starting offensive line. They had a hard time blocking backups in the preseason, and it came to fruition here. Like, that O-line was absolutely terrible. Tua Tagovailoa didn't have a whole lot of time. The run game with Devon Achane really didn't get a whole lot going. 78 rushing yards as a team for the entire game. The passing game wasn't there. The O-line is horrific. I mean, I have to put Miami bottom 5 after 1 week, and I already had them in that area of being one of the lesser offensive lines in the NFL. They might be bottom 5 offensive line guaranteed after last week. It was hideous. There was no run game, very little time for Tua, and when Tua did get time, I don't know whether it's all the head injuries, all the concussions, all the setbacks he's had, but he looked like he was not setting his feet, seeing the field well at all. He was missing throws, the few throws that were there for him, and he's missing them. And that's a real concern. And then on the defensive side of the football, it really wasn't that much better. You know, Daniel Jones basically up and down the field for the Indianapolis Colts offensively throughout that game against Miami's defense. There was no pass rush. The secondary got carved up a decent amount by Daniel Jones in that game, 272 passing yards. Secondary was just an abysmal unit for the Dolphins in that game. There is not one element, Phil, of their team that looked competent on Sunday against Indianapolis. And some of that's got to fall on Mike McDaniel. Like, what the fuck have you been doing with this team the last few months, dude? Like, my goodness, you've had all months to get this team ready to play, and they couldn't have looked possibly any worse than they did against Indianapolis. Now, I'm not about to start singing the praises and showering this Patriots team with a bunch of accolades either, because that was not a pretty first game either for them, losing at home to the Las Vegas Raiders 20-13. It was a struggle for the Patriots to get anything going on the ground. I think that was a bit surprising, 60 rushing yards. But they did hold Las Vegas to just 56 rushing yards, so neither team really ran the football. The problem is Ashton Jeanty had an inauspicious debut, 19 attempts, 38 yards. Geno Smith, though, had his day, and that's, again, he goes to New England, and he rips apart that secondary like he did last year with Seattle. 362 passing yards. Drake May was solid in the game. 30 for 46, 287 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But unfortunately for the Patriots, you know, the 1 interception that he had, and also there was a fumble in there in that game as well by the Patriots that hurt them. You know, the first downs were only 21-18. It was a tough day for the New England Patriots, but like I said, at least they were in the game still. There were some things to like. The defense did kind of hang in there for as long as they could. And when you look at this Miami offensive line, I don't see how you don't give an edge to New England, and especially Vrabel with a chance to kind of game plan against this team. So I've got Miami next to New Orleans after last week as maybe the worst team in the NFL. That is how much I downgraded the Miami Dolphins last week. And again, you wouldn't know Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle played for the Miami Dolphins last week. I mean, they just couldn't get the football to them, product of the offensive line problems. So I like New England here. You know, I know it's on the road, and sometimes for that road team early when they play in Miami in September, they wear down in the heat, and sometimes that can be an advantage for the Dolphins. We've talked about that for years. But I definitely think the Patriots, this can be a winnable football game for them. I certainly give Vrabel an edge over McDaniel in the preparation and the coaching department for this game. And I think New England, when you look at it, against a Raiders team that I like to be improved this year, I'm going to not, panic as much about the Patriots' performance and be as concerned about the way they played compared to the Dolphins. I think New England still can end up being the better of these two teams this year, and I'll take them here as a slight road underdog in this matchup on Sunday in the AFC East divisional game, of course. Phil, what do you think, Patriots-Dolphins?
Look, I don't get me wrong. I think that the Miami performance was atrocious. That was really bad. Tua looked terrible. Defense, I mean, they just didn't look well prepared at all. With that being said, kind of like what we were talking about with Packers and Lions here, I think the Colts are a better team than what people think. So I think that they actually, they looked pretty good. Now, this is just me anticipating, home in Miami, traditionally in September, Tua and that offense has been able to move the ball. I think they're going to move the ball. There's no way that they're going to come out and lay another egg like that, I don't think. With that being said, to your point, I think Mike Vrabel is going to have this team more prepared, ready to go. I think if anything on this game here, I agree with you. I'm leaning Patriots, especially if they're, they're the underdog here, but I also think this is going to go over. I think the Patriots and the Dolphins both are going to move this in Miami, where they've traditionally moved the ball. So that's what I'm leaning here towards as Patriots plus a 1.5 and an over here. I think Miami's going to move the ball, but I think Drake May is going to answer and win the game.
Yeah, well, I will say this: if you like Miami, series history's on your side. I don't. like Miami in this game, but series history is on your side. Miami is 8-1
Yeah, it is.
in the last 9 meetings against the New England Patriots. So they've had the better of it. They've won and covered 4 straight. And the last 2 meetings in Miami, Patriots versus the Dolphins, have gone over the total, 48 and 49 points in those 2 games. So Bill liking the over here with the Patriots and the Dolphins. All right, Jacksonville and Cincinnati. We've got Cincinnati 3.5-point home favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. How about the Bengals winning with their defense for a change? Yes, that's right. The much maligned, absolutely putrid Cincinnati Bengals defense of a season ago actually is the unit that stepped up when they needed it last week against the Cleveland Browns to hang on, because the offense really struggled. It was kind of stunning to see that. But yeah, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati offense was really stuck in mud. The Browns put the screws to them, ended up really playing great on that side of the ball. And more importantly, the Cincinnati offensive line woes came back to roost in that game. Myles Garrett was living. You know, he could have built a house in the Cincinnati backfield last week. I mean, he was just all over Joe Burrow throughout that football game. More issues with the pass protection from the Cincinnati Bengals. Certainly a concern in that game. It allowed Cleveland to hang around. But the good news is that Cincinnati got some stops. They benefited from, obviously, the young kicker, Andre Schmidt, there for the Cleveland Browns, having just a terrible day. And, of course, missing the field goal late that would have given the Browns the lead. Ugly win, but Cincinnati does get that win last week against the Cleveland Browns. Joe Burrow, though, you would have thought they lost the game if you listen to him in his post-game remarks saying our offense needs to be a lot better. We can't be playing like that on offense, especially in the second half. And I get why he feels that way. You know, 17 points for an offense with this much talent on it, when you're talking about Burrow and Higgins and Chase and Yosivas, the great receivers that they've got. Chase Brown, I think, is going to be a pretty good running back for this team. You've got great skill position talent, but it matters not if the offensive line's not going to run block and pass protect. And that, again, was a bit of an issue for Cincinnati. But Cleveland's got the chance to have a good defensive front, and we know how great Myles Garrett can be. I don't know about Jacksonville's defense just yet. And I know they played great in their blowout win against the Carolina Panthers last week, but, you know, I watched a good chunk of that game. Carolina was awful. Let's not kid ourselves. Carolina was really putrid. It was a really terrible game from them, especially Bryce Young. That disappointed me, what we saw from Bryce Young. Missed throws, bad decisions, interceptions, that took points off the board. Just was a mess, really, for the Carolina offense in that game. Meanwhile, Liam Cohen, Philip Nelson's favorite coach in the NFL right now, pretty solid returns early on. You know, what was nice is that they didn't ask Trevor Lawrence to do it all. You know, Trevor Lawrence was good. No question about that. But the one thing about the Liam Cohen offenses, and it includes Tampa Bay last year, is he wants the running game involved. He wants the running backs involved. And we saw a good chunk of that last week against Carolina, where they got Travis Etienne involved. 143 rushing yards on 16 attempts for Travis Etienne. So to say they got the ground game going is an understatement. They were able to run the football with great success. Lawrence, the numbers were solid, 178 passing yards. The fact that he had the run game to support him was good. I still don't trust Cincy's defense just yet. Now, maybe Al Golden's a great hire, and he's going to do a great job. He certainly did a great job at Notre Dame. There's no question. But I need to see more. Cleveland's still a limited offensive football team. Their O-line's not great. They have an aging quarterback in Joe Flacco, who actually played solid, but still. It's Joe Flacco in his fucking 40s. Let's not kid ourselves here. Now you're going to have to go up against Jacksonville and a revitalized offense. I think Liam Cohen, even in just one game, he's given this Jacksonville offense a little bit of, confidence, belief. I like that they got the run game going. While the numbers weren't spectacular, off the charts great from Trevor Lawrence. I think there were a lot of things that I liked about his play from that win against Carolina. So I think Jacksonville can go into Cincy and move the football on offense. I'm not there yet with the Jacksonville defense. I really thought Carolina's offense was bad, really, really bad. And something tells me, with Burrow frustrated and angry and agitated about the lack of production from the offense in the second half against Cleveland last week, that you're going to see that be the focus going into this game. Get the offense going again. Our offense is better than that. And I don't think, even though there's issues with the O-line for Cincinnati, I don't think Jacksonville will exploit those issues the way Cleveland did last week. So I like over 48.5 here. This one maybe my favorite total on the board this week. I think we're going to see points both ways here in this game. As far as the side goes, it's a tough side. I don't want to lay more than 3 with Cincinnati. We saw it last week. Somehow, some way, laying significant points with the Bengals, especially when it falls in game 1 or game 2 of the season, where the Cincinnati Bengals are truly wretched, 2-11 straight up in their in 13 games in either week 1 or 2 under Zach Taylor. Like, I'm not laying points of 3.5 with that kind of track record. And look at last week. Cleveland hangs around, covers the number, and Cincinnati escapes with a 1-point win. I'm not laying 3.5 with Cincy, but I am concerned about the Jacksonville defense holding up against Cincinnati's offense. I just think the better route to take in this game is over 48.5. Phil, what do you think here? Jags, Bengals.
Yeah, I think this game screams over. You have a Jacksonville defense that's, I'm not sold on quite yet. They played pretty well. I think I only saw 1 sack out of them last weekend. So Joe Burrow should have time. And I think coming off that performance last week, I think that this is a perfect bounce back opportunity for Cincinnati at home. So we'll have to monitor. I think I saw Chase Brown only with 43 yards. So got to get the run game going. But I think
he was off to a red hot start, and then it's like it just evaporated after.
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So his long was 8 yards. So kind of surprised by that there. But trust me, I think this offense is going to come back. Fueled up, fired up, and ready to go. Now Cincinnati defense, I think they played pretty well last week against a very bad Browns offense. At the same time, I think, I'm going to trust in my guy, Liam Cohen here. I think Trevor Lawrence, he wasn't forced to play hero ball. They ran the ball great. They have weapons on offense now. This game screams over to me, and I am 1,000% on board with you as well. I'm not going to lay points to Cincinnati in September. Just not going to do it. So, I'd be interested to see, what the Cincinnati team total is.
Let me just double check on that right now. Team total for Cincinnati is 26.5.
Okay, I was gonna say shit. I'd take 28. So I think this game screams over. And I would lean more towards a Cincinnati team total over here than anything, and maybe even tease it down. Who knows?
Yeah, I definitely like that more than I like obviously taking minus 3.5 with Cincinnati.
I learned from the best, man.
Yeah, team totals sometimes with favorites, especially the favorites where you do not trust them defensively, and that's still the case with me. I need to see more from the Bengals defense. Give them credit, solid performance last week, but that's a very pedestrian Cleveland Browns offense, and I think
Jacksonville is different.
A little bit more here, no doubt. All right, next, speaking of Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens, a little AFC North division battle here. Baltimore 11.5-point home favorites, 45 the total in this game. Now, you can look at this one of 2 ways. One is Baltimore is going to be seething after blowing that game against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday night, where they're in control, they're dominating. Lamar Jackson looked great. Derrick Henry looked great. Well, they looked great for 56 minutes. And then they did not look great all of a sudden for the last 4 minutes. Derrick Henry, after an unbelievable game, fumbles at the worst possible time. Buffalo turns that into a touchdown, even though they missed the 2-point conversion. I mean, everybody on talk radio and every mainstream media has been screaming about it. So here's our chance to scream about it. You cannot give the ball back to Josh Allen on that 4th down when you're down 40-38. And I don't love the play calls from Todd. Todd Monken is not some big-time offensive coordinator. I've seen enough where in big spots, the play calls just don't make sense. Too choreographed, too telegraphed, too obvious that Henry was going to get the ball, and then an end around to Zay Flowers that didn't go anywhere. And then the bane of my existence that on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, whatever it was, you throw a 5-yard pass short of the sticks. Throw it to the yard marker. Throw it beyond the first down line. And, of course, they didn't do that. But the biggest egregious mistake was punting on 4th down. Are you kidding me? When they only need a field goal? You're going to give Josh Allen and that team that's got all the momentum on their side, you're going to give them the ball back and give them a chance to win? No, this day and age, you've got to try to end it with your offense as opposed to your defense with these great quarterbacks that we have. percolating across the NFL right now. So that was just a bad decision to punt it. And of course, they pay the price. They didn't waste any time. I mean, Josh Allen right down the field, and the defense was ripped in the fourth quarter. And you know what the hilarious part is? Baltimore couldn't make a tackle, couldn't stop anybody in the fourth quarter. And the one time you actually wanted them to let someone score or not make the tackle, they made the tackle at the last play because they should have let Buffalo score to give Baltimore at least some time on the clock to get the ball and maybe answer. But because they tackled him, shoestring tackle inside the 10, Buffalo's able to run the clock down to 3 seconds left and kick the game-winning field goal walk-off fashion with no time left, and Baltimore not getting the ball back. So it was just a horrendous end to that game for Baltimore. And, this is not the first time this has happened at John Harbaugh's team. They've had a lot of these meltdowns in the fourth quarter and games that they had no business losing that they ended up losing. And, that's the problem with totally buying into them as getting over that hump finally and winning a Super Bowl. The offense was great for 56 minutes. Hell, the defense played pretty well most of that game until it didn't on both sides of the football. So the first thing is, do you want to step in front of Baltimore here? Off a loss, coming off of that kind of loss against a team that they're capable of dominating and winning by margin. But then you look at last year where they had that tough loss against Kansas City. Remember, a very similar tough loss. They lost the opener to Kansas City last year, the Baltimore Ravens. And then I'm sure there's people that thought, like they might think here, that they're in a bounce back spot, tough loss in a tough game to start the year against the Chiefs. But the Ravens are the much better team, and the very next week they should bounce back. But to be honest with you, that did not happen last year for the Baltimore Ravens, because after that tough loss at Arrowhead to begin the season against the Chiefs 27-20, they were an 8.5-point favorite at home against Las Vegas, who didn't have a great season last year, and they lost that game outright 26-23 to fall to 0-2 to begin the season. So they did not bounce back after the tough loss last year in week 1 when they played in week 2 against an inferior team. That's concerning. It's Browns or nothing for me. I would consider it. Remember, there's still a divisional matchup.
Yeah.
Division dogs, and we've talked about it long term. Good bets in the NFL, especially when you're talking about double digits. Look at look at last year. I know Baltimore won big in the second meeting at the end of the year, 35-10. But Cleveland had won and covered 2 in a row before that against the Baltimore Ravens. I'll say this about Cleveland. Their defense was pretty damn good against Cincy. Myles Garrett was a difference maker. He's all over the place. The secondary covered those great Bengals receivers pretty well down the field. And when you look at, obviously, the Cleveland offense, it wasn't great, but I thought Flacco, he played solid. I think they probably should have scored more points than they did. The kicker was not good. Cost Cleveland from scoring more points than they did. Still threw for 290 yards. Did Joe Flacco in that game. And they are going to have to do better running the football. You can't have Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford combining for 18 carries and 37 yards. That's got to be better here in this game against Baltimore. But I just don't trust the Ravens laying this much. I just don't. And last year we thought bounce back after losing a tough one to Kansas City, and they lost outright as favorites to the Raiders at home. This year, kind of the same rhetoric. Oh, tough loss against Buffalo, but now you got an inferior team at home. You can bounce back. They didn't even win the game last year against the Raiders in this similar spot. So, it's not going to be my best bet or a significant position, but I'm going to end up taking the Browns for something here, plus 11.5. What do you think here, Phil? Cleveland, Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree, and those are some good points you make there. This Ravens team, man, they just don't come through when you need them to. And that, I think that's just a lack of discipline, a lack of just being strategic, and they make, and a lack of discipline. I just don't see them. This bounce back game rhetoric as well. I mean, that's pretty surprising. So they started off the year last year 0-2, huh? Like, I mean,
yep.
That's pretty alarming. Not to even mention that was the Raiders. This is an AFC. This is a divisional opponent. With a great defense, and I don't think that this is the Ravens.
Stopped the run last week. Cincinnati couldn't run the football after that. Brown got a few good runs in the first drive, and they didn't do anything running the football after that.
Exactly.
That's the strength of the Baltimore offense is the run game.
Yeah. So you know what? I don't love this one either because it could go either way. I really do think that the Ravens could be pissed off. They could get after them. but man, I mean, do you think that the Browns are going to be able to stop, Lamar and King Henry on the ground? That's the big thing for me here. I don't. I think that they're going to be able to get to Lamar in the passing game. But 45, the other thing too is the Browns offense. I just don't particularly trust them either at this point. You're right. Joe Flacco didn't play too bad. He had those interceptions, but he threw for almost 300. So he was moving it when he needed to, and then obviously some missed field goals. And we're talking about a different story here, but you know what? I kind of agree with you at this point. I'm not feeling great about the Ravens here. I don't love this spread here. In terms of the total, I would lean under here. I think this is going to be a divisional defensive matchup game here. So, if anything, I'm going under here. Looks like we lost Ian. Hopefully he can join back. Let me give him a call, folks.
Sorry about that, but we are back. Yeah, there was just power flicker just for a second, so got knocked out. working, but we're back. You can knock me out, but you can't keep me down forever. That's what we like to say, but we're back. All right, let's move it along because we're on a bit of a time constraint here. So Giants, Cowboys 6-point home favorites, 44 the total in this game. Boy, the Giants were rough on offense. The offensive line didn't look great last week. More issues from last year with that. Russell Wilson just not very good, not accurate. They did move the ball at times, but struggled in the red zone to finish drives. Sub 50% completions from Wilson. That's just simply not good enough. They could not get any sort of run game going with Tyrone Tracy last week either. Real concerns I have for the New York Giants. Meanwhile, Dallas, I come out of that Philly game, a little bit more positive about them, even though they lost that game. I thought Dak Prescott played well. If not for CeeDee Lamb, just all of a sudden forgetting how to catch the football, it could have been a win for the Dallas Cowboys there, but they moved the ball against Philly in that game. Now, defense still struggled a little bit at times against Jalen Hurts, but once the lightning delay happened, now maybe the lightning delay played a role in it, and maybe Philly's rhythm on offense kind of was slowed and stalled by that delay. But nevertheless, Dallas's defense after that played pretty well. I don't know. I feel like if I bet the Giants here, I don't know if I want to do that after what I saw last week. But I also know if I'm laying 6 here with Dallas, I might be overreacting a little bit to how they looked and how the Giants looked. And let's be honest, Washington's a hell of a lot better still, in my opinion, than Dallas at the moment. So, and something about Dallas laying 6 at home too. I'm not fully on board with that. I don't fully trust them laying almost a touchdown at home. And it's not like playing at home ATS over the years has been a good thing for the Dallas Cowboys. They haven't been the best point spread team at home. And this goes all the way back to when Jason Garrett took over the team. But considering it was their first game with Micah Parsons, it is good to see the way the defense played later in that game against Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. This is probably a game I don't bet, quite honestly. I don't have a strong opinion on it. But like I said, I thought the Giants would be improved, but I saw enough warning signs against Washington that I'm probably going to sit this one out. Philip, what do you think here, Giants, Cowboys?
Yeah, you know what? If anything here, I would lean Cowboys -6. I think the Cowboys really showed improvements, and I think offensively they were able to move the ball and run the ball. That was a big thing for Dak, and now they got these two weapons on offense, and I don't see CeeDee Lamb dropping passes continually here. Giants are just absolutely atrocious. If there's anyone I don't trust in this, it's Russell Wilson and this offensive line. I really think that the Giants are going to have a lot of issues the rest of the season, given the fact that they cannot protect the quarterback, can't run the football. It's going to be tough sledding for them. I don't love the points here. Because I don't know what the Giants are going to put up, but I think the Cowboys are going to put up some points against these guys. I would take them -6, if anything here.
All right, Rams and Titans. We've got the LA Rams 5.5-point road favorites, 42 the total. After that Tennessee-Denver game, I'm at the point almost where I think I've seen enough of our guy Callahan Auto Parts, Brian Callahan. Terrible job. The coaching staff was bad in that game. You could tell they were ill-prepared. And then some of the shit they did during the game. Your offense can't move the football. Cam Ward is struggling badly. How in your right mind do you find that it is the right thing to do when you're backed up in your own zone, under 2 minutes left in the first half, to throw the ball 3 times in a row, punt the ball back to Denver, and give them the ball on a short field, and they turned it into a touchdown? That is egregious decision-making in game. Egregious coaching to make that decision. To run the ball and get to halftime. You clearly are struggling on offense. Why would you give Denver a short field and risk giving Denver a short field to score with the final minute in the quarter? And that's exactly what happened. And then later in the game, when they're still hanging around, because I actually give Tennessee's defense credit.
Yeah.
They played pretty solid. I was impressed with the defense. The offense was a horror show. That's another story. Cam Ward looked total deer in the headlights, and the O-line didn't do him any favors either. Mm-hmm. But what the hell are you doing when you're in Denver territory off a turnover, short field to work with? You're already in field goal range. What are you doing drop back passing all the time? He takes all these sacks. They get knocked out of field goal range. More questionable coaching and offensive play calling from the Tennessee Titans in that game. It was atrocious. It was that bad. And then the worst part of it all, I got to listen to Brian Callahan in the postgame throwing his rookie quarterback under the bus. Oh, learning lesson. He's got to get rid of the football. No, you have to call better plays, asshole. I mean, my goodness, you dumb. Like, what are you doing? Drop back passing 2-3 times in a row when your offensive line's not been protecting Ward at all, when you've had trouble finding the receivers down the field. How about run the football? How about take pressure off your offensive line for a change and keep yourself in field goal range to at least put 3 points on the board instead of getting knocked out? How about running the clock out in the first half with our offense struggling instead of pass the ball, throw the ball, and we give the ball back to Denver on a short field? And he has the nerve to throw poor Cam Ward in his first ever NFL start under the bus like it's all his fault. That's disgraceful. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I hate this coaching staff. They could kick rocks as far as I'm concerned. I've seen enough. And they obviously had a bad year last year. There's no chance I'm taking the Titans here in this game. Now, for the Rams, they're off a big win against Houston. They're going on the road. It's a long travel, and it's an early start game. There are some situational elements that I don't love here for the Rams, but I love that defense, man. The way they played against Houston. I mean, they got players on that side of football. Really, really was impressed with their defense last week. They got the turnover late to seal the deal against Houston, of course, late in that game. They shut down C.J. Stroud and the Texans' offense for the most part. And, yeah, it was a choppy game from the offense and Stafford, but Stafford didn't play all preseason because of the back issue. You had to expect there'd be some rust there, but when the game was on the line, the offense got it going in the second half, and when they needed points in the fourth quarter, Matt Stafford and the Rams delivered. That's a really good team, and that's a heck of a coach, Sean McVay. We all like Sean McVay, and he continues to do a great job with this team. That's a huge coaching mismatch, in my opinion, here, McVay versus Callahan. Rams are nothing. Am I crazy about laying 5.5 on the road? No, but I would definitely take Rams -5.5 here before I take the Titans +5.5. More than anything, maybe the under here, because the Rams might have a defense, and that Tennessee offense was just terrible. Like, they could not get anything going. But their own defense, they made life tough on Bo Nix. So maybe the defense can just dig in at home and do enough to keep this team in the game and keep it low scoring. So I think the under is a pretty good way to go here. What do you think, Phil? Rams, Titans?
No, I completely agree with everything you just said there. Zero creativity out of the Titans versus the Broncos. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, Denver's defense is great, but when you have zero creativity against a defense like that, you're setting your rookie QB up for failure. And I completely agree with what you were saying there. Offensively for the Broncos, I think there was a lot of miscommunication there between Bo Nix and some of his receivers, and you saw that with some of his interception. I think that the Broncos are working out some kinks here. Obviously it's early in the year, but credit to the Titans, though. Just like you said, credit to the Titans for doing that. I think part of it was some Broncos mental mistakes, but for the most part here, I don't like this Titans coaching staff. I think the Rams offense is going to be able to move the ball enough to win this one. I don't know about -5.5 like you said, but I'm on board with an under here. I don't see the Titans putting up too many points against this Rams defense. Jared Verse, what a stud that guy is, all over the place. I know he didn't get a sack, but if you watch him, he's disrupting things just like how Micah Parsons does. So, I think that Rams defense is for real, and that Texans offense. I mean, that's a whole nother thing we have to talk about. What's this Texans offense looking like? Here's the Rams defense that good, but to your point, I think the Rams defense is that good, and I think I would lean towards an under here as well.
All right, next up, we've got the Bills and Jets. Buffalo 6.5-point road favorites, 46.5 for total. I mean, if you're the Jets, if you're a Jets fan, you got a right to be disappointed losing the game against Pittsburgh. But to hear same old Jets, I think that's being too harsh. I think there were a lot of positives for the New York Jets last week in the first game under Aaron Glenn, the new head coach. I mean, first of all, how good? When's the last time you've seen Justin Fields play that well? I mean, My goodness. And the offense was just outstanding. I love that the Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, the dual running backs got going. That's as good as the run game for the Jets has played. That was supposed to be a good Pittsburgh Steelers defense that they were going up against. They marched the ball up and down the field most of that game. And now they get a Buffalo team that's coming in here, short week, an emotional, incredible comeback win against Baltimore when it looked like they were down and out. Let's not forget, Buffalo's defense got ripped apart for 55 minutes in that game against Baltimore. And their run defense in particular, Derrick Henry had a field day. And to see the Jets have success running it last week against Pittsburgh in that 34-32 loss with Braylon Allen and Breece Hall, makes me think that maybe they can have some success running the football here against Buffalo. Remember, Buffalo went into that Ravens game last week with defensive line injuries, a couple key losses in the secondary as well, and it showed. I mean, that was not a great Bills defense. So maybe there is a pathway for the Jets to score points here in this game. The question is the Jets defense going to keep Josh Allen and this freight train offense in check? Because once the Bills offense got going, the Ravens couldn't stop it. And the Jets defense wasn't great last week against Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers had a pretty good game. Most of it, though, was through the air, because the Pittsburgh run game with Warren and Gainwell didn't do a lot. Everything pretty much came through the air. So it was really the passing offense of the Steelers with Rodgers that did the damage against the Jets. They actually didn't do that bad against the run, but the secondary got carved up a little bit for the Jets in that game, which is still a problem, obviously, when you're talking about Josh Allen, who can throw the football as good as anybody. I mean, I lean over 46.5 here in this game, but I'm actually kind of leaning Jets here as a home underdog. I mean, I don't love this spot for the Bills. I mean, they're coming off that huge, miraculous comeback, still a bit banged up on defense. I know they've owned the Jets. I mean, look at last year. They won both meetings. They're 8-2 straight up. The last 10 versus the Jets. But the game in New York, which is where this will be, MetLife Stadium, last year, Bills only won that game 23-20 last year over the New York Jets. And Jets, were right in that game. And remember, that was with the Jets kind of going through issues. Now, it was Aaron Rodgers' Jets that game last year. Like I said, I think just given the spot and the number where it is, and normally you would not think you're flat for a division game, but I think coming back in the Baltimore game the way they did, and with those defensive concerns still very much there, I'd have a hard time endorsing Buffalo laying almost a touchdown on the road. So it's Jets and a lean to the over for me in this game. What do you think, Phil? Bills, Jets?
I agree. The Jets should be feeling really good coming off that performance. Defensively, it seemed like they were close, but the Steelers, I think they just schemed them up pretty well. Rodgers had guys running wide open there on some of those plays. For the most part, though, this Jets offense, man, I mean, they can run the ball, and I think that's where they're going to be able to keep this close with the Bills. A total for me, tough to tell here, 46.5. I see this kind of being surprisingly a little bit more of a defensive game, just AFC division-wise, but I think the Jets can cover this. I think they're going to be close. I see this kind of being, a 2023 type of game here. So I would lean an under here as well.
All right, next up, we've got the Ben Johnson Bowl. Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. Detroit 5.5-point home favorites, 46.5 the total in this game. Now, this is one of these spots where it's, wow, here's it's kind of like Cleveland-Baltimore, where I want to take the dog. I lean to taking the dog. I lean to Cleveland in that game against Baltimore, even though it's an obvious bounce-back spot for the Baltimore Ravens. This is an obvious bounce-back spot for the Detroit Lions. Look, they're at home. Nobody's happy about the way that Green Bay game went. Dan Campbell's talking about it. We got to show that we're better than this. And look, it's Chicago after that great first drive from Caleb Williams against Minnesota on Monday night. That offense sputtered and went back to the same old offense and Caleb Williams after that. The defense for 3 great quarters, J.J. McCarthy could barely get a first down, for 2-3 quarters. And then all of a sudden they're marching up and down the field, scoring multiple touchdowns and coming back and beating the Bears on Monday night, Minnesota. With all of that, there's still a lot of issues. That Detroit didn't have a pass rush against Green Bay. I don't love the interior of their offensive line. This is a game the Bears and Ben Johnson have circled, going back to Detroit, where he had all that success as an offensive coordinator. It's a division dog spot for Chicago. Not to mention, they had a terrible coach in Eberflus the last few years. And the last few years, in spite of that, they went to Detroit and they covered both times when they played the Lions at Ford Field in Detroit. Last year, they screwed up the clock at the end of the game. They probably should have beat Detroit. They lost 23-20. And then the year before that, in Detroit, they lost 31-26. But they covered both of those games as 10-point and 7.5-point underdogs, losing both of them by 5 points or less. I still think I'm going to take a shot with Chicago here and dare the Lions to show me that they can correct the mistakes, that they can show me that, there really is not a bunch of issues this year that they can't fix. I think there's some issues here. And from Chicago, I know they've circled. Now, I don't love that it's a short week after playing on Monday night, but I'm still leaning to the Bears here, plus the points. What do you think here, Philip, with Chicago, Detroit?
I certainly think there was a lot more positive coming out of Chicago than Detroit after week one, and that's what I'm hanging my hat on here. I think Ben Johnson has Caleb Williams playing actually very well. I thought those first two quarters and getting the ball out of his hand, Caleb Williams looked very mobile too. Escaping the rush there, and with the Lions, I just think this Bears offense is too powerful for them. Again, I don't, the Bears defense did get after JJ McCarthy, like you said. I think if that's the case here, I think the Lions are in a serious upset alert here. I'm definitely leaning Bears plus 5.5 here. And I actually think there will be an over on this one as well. I think this could be a high scoring game, given the fact that both these defenses are unproven at this point, and especially, the Lions. And I think the Lions are going to keep it close, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears, screw around and win this one. So, I'm leaning Bears plus 5.5 here.
Seattle, Pittsburgh. We got the Steelers 3-point home favorites. Look at this total, 40. Last week, the Pittsburgh total against the New York Jets was 38. It ended up being the highest scoring game on Sunday afternoon between the early and late games combined. No one saw that coming. One of the lowest totals on the board, and it was a shootout with the Jets and the Steelers last week. Look, that Pittsburgh defense performance was a concern. That was eye-opening. That was horrific. And when I started to think about it, I'm like, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, even Jalen Ramsey, a lot of these are older players now at this stage of their career. They looked old, they looked slow a bit, they looked haggard a bit on defense. A lot of concerns, and the secondary did not play well at all. There were times that there were guys running why they didn't stop the run all that well, and that was supposed to be something the Steelers were supposed to be able to do. I'm not sure I'm comfortable laying 3 in this game with Pittsburgh, knowing the way that defense played. Now, on the other side of the ball, I can't even say the offense fully played great. Aaron Rodgers in the passing game was great because that's where they did all their damage. They did struggle to run the football against the Jets. And I know they found a way to win, and they've got maybe the best kicker in the NFL right now, and Chris Boswell. What an absolute money kick that was, 60 yards to give them the lead. He's the best kicker in the NFL right now. I don't think there's much debate about that. He was absolutely, just clutch, nailing that field goal late in the game. But when you and look, Seattle's offense didn't look great with Sam Darnold. It was spotty. It was inconsistent. Other than Smith and Jigba, there was not much in the passing game. The run game was not really all that great. The defense was really good, though. Even though they lost a heartbreaker to San Francisco last week, I thought the defense played really well. There was lots to like with the Seahawks on that side of the ball. So when you're talking about a Seattle defense that looked pretty good and a Pittsburgh defense that looked awful, I have a hard time laying a field goal with the much worse defense, what we saw last week. So could be a sneaky buy low spot on Seattle. I haven't moved on this game yet, but if this gets any higher, certainly if it hits a 3.5, I'm going to have to be a buyer on Seattle. I'm just going to have to. What do you think here, Phil? Seattle, Pittsburgh.
I agree with you there. I think the Seattle defense kind of surprised us, although I will say I don't think the 49ers are exactly the same team as well.
Yeah, they had injuries. Kittle left that game.
Yeah.
Jennings didn't play. They were banged up. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
A lot of injuries. I get it.
And you know what? The Seattle offense didn't impress me very much either. I don't think they really moved the ball very well, very consistently. Against the 49ers defense, that was very suspect. So I'm going to take this is what I hang my hat on always. It seems like with Pittsburgh is Mike Tomlin's going to get this defense bouncing back. I think that Seattle, just in terms of talent, isn't anywhere near the Jets, to be honest. I think the Jets had to go out and prove it week one, but I just don't see the Seahawks, moving the ball the way that the Jets did against the Steelers. So with that being said, I like the Steelers here -3. If it raises up any more, I'm with you here on that. But I could, 40. I don't know about that total. But I could see the Steelers moving the ball and holding up Seahawks.
San Francisco, New Orleans. Speaking of San Francisco, a reason why all the money's come in on New Orleans here is because of those injuries to the 49ers. San Francisco, 3-point road favorites. The total, 40.5 here in this game. George Kittle left due to an injury. They were already without Jennings and Ayuk as far as the receiving core. A lot of injuries on offense. And now Brock Purdy shows up on the injury report with an unexpected injury. And it's starting to really look like it might be Mac Jones making the start here on Sunday, which explains why there's all kinds of money on San Francisco. Bring on that New Orleans money. I'm still tempted to take San Francisco at the better number now. Mac Jones can play. Like, we don't love him as a number one quarterback, but he has shown Jacksonville, after he left New England, he can go in there for a game or two and play well for you. And he's got the benefit of Kyle Shanahan coaching him up, good offensive mind. I still think New Orleans is one of the worst teams in the NFL. Now, they were a little bit better last week than I thought against Arizona. Like, Spencer Rattler moved the ball at times. Still don't think their defense is that great. I think you're getting a discount here on San Francisco and a mild. Now, they are banged up. I get it. But a little bit of an overreaction to all the injuries, and Mac Jones now looking likely to start instead of Brock Purdy on Sunday in this game. But, at this number, I'll be honest, I'm getting interested in the 49ers at -3 or better. What do you think here in this one, Phil? 49ers Saints.
I completely agree. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction here. And actually what I saw earlier too was that it's trending that Brock Purdy actually might very well still play. I think Ricky Pearsall is going to have a field day with some of these Saints DBs. So I really like some Ricky Pearsall prop bets there as well. But yeah, I think that you're getting a major discount here. New Orleans, I think that performance there said more about the Cardinals. I don't think they executed very well. Defensively, wow. I mean, they let up some easy ones there on them. But I think the Cardinals, offensively, they also didn't take advantage. I think that was a poor performance by the Cardinals, and the Saints just did enough to make it look close. With that being said, I'm leaning 49ers here -3. I think that is a discount, like you said.
All right, next up, we've got Carolina, Arizona. Arizona 6.5-point home favorites, 44 the total in this game. Boy, it looked rough for Carolina. I don't want to overreact because it's overreaction week going into week 2, but Bryce Young didn't look great. Offensive line didn't look great. It didn't look like they had the receiving corps looks pretty bad for Carolina. I didn't see anyone step up, make big plays in the passing game. Defense got handed to them by Jacksonville in the run game. I lean Arizona here, but I feel a little bit more comfortable just putting them in teasers this week. You get them down to pick them in a teaser. I think that could be the way to go. I could honestly lean Arizona team total over a little bit because they could do some damage here against this Carolina defense. Did not like what I saw from the Panthers defensively in last week's loss. What do you think here, Carolina, Arizona?
I agree. I think Carolina might be competing with New Orleans again as some of the worst teams in the league here. Bryce Young, not impressed. They couldn't really run the football very well either. Not a ton of good weapons, like you said. Missed throws from Bryce Young. So, with that being said, and the way that the Cardinals offense performed last week, I would lean towards an under here. But yeah, I'm not laying any points for the Panthers here. Don't know about the spread here. I don't trust the Cardinals either after that week 1. So I think if anything here, I'm leaning towards an under at 43.5.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little leery of laying 6.5 with Arizona. That's my lean. But at the end of the day, they were in a game that they were in control of most of the way. They were hanging on for dear life at the end against New Orleans, and that kind of bothered me, though. They didn't finish that game well, Arizona, and that's what concerns me here in this one. All right, Denver, Indy. Denver, 1.5-point road favorites, 42.5 the total in this game. Look, Denver didn't play as well offensively. The defense was good, but a lot of that was Tennessee breaking in Cam Ward, O-line issues, horrendous offensive decision-making and play calling. But Denver's defense, we did expect Denver's defense to be really good, and it was. Indy's defense was great too, but it was against Miami. We've got all kinds of concerns about them, especially their offensive line. We'll see how this one plays out. But Daniel Jones looked really good last week against Miami. But I think this is going to be a lot tougher for him against, I think, a Denver defense that's pretty good. This could be a low-scoring game, too. I'm off the side. I mean, I'm going to give Indy a chance to show me that last week was not just you played a terrible Miami team. I'm going to give them a chance to show that they could actually step up against one of the better team, a better team than Miami, certainly Denver. But I'm not going to back them. I think it's just a good watch and see and learn type of game for me. Phil, what do you think? Broncos, Colts.
I agree. I think this is the toughest game on the card to predict here, just given the fact that we weren't expecting that out of the Colts. And then at the same time, that Broncos offense didn't impress against that Titans defense. But I agree with you here. If anything, I don't like putting money on this one, but I would think that the Broncos can pull this one out by more than 1.5 here. Could be a low scoring game, though. I agree. Just given I think both these defenses played well last week. I think the Broncos have some kinks to still work out. And I think the Colts, like I said before, I think they're a better team than people think. They have some dudes on defense now, and they got after Tua last week. They didn't make it easy. So I would lean, if anything, on under here.
All right, next up, Eagles and Chiefs. This is going to be the big one at 4 o'clock. I believe this is the Tom Brady game. He'll be calling this one on Fox.
Nice.
We got the Eagles 1-point road favorites. It's 47 the total. Him and Kevin Burkhardt, of course, for Fox. I think Kansas City. It's one game, right? But they didn't look good against the Chargers. I mean, once Xavier Worthy went out of that game with injury, the receiving court, we saw Brown dropping passes. We didn't see much from the other receivers. Travis Kelce, other than a broken play that he scored on, he didn't do a whole lot. In that the passing game looked off. The offensive line was a bit shaky. And the defense, Herbert had tons of success against that Chiefs defense. Maybe they are going to step back this year. That is concerning. But this is a one-way game for me in spite of those concerns. I'm not betting against Kansas City in this spot as a home dog, playing the team that embarrassed them in the Super Bowl. That's just not going to happen. But I'm not rushing to bet KC. I got real concerns. But if I had to bet this game, the lean would still be Kansas City. But maybe they're just not going to be as good this year, because that was a sign of maybe it's not going to be the same Kansas City this year. That was not a great showing against the Chargers down in Sao Paulo last Friday night. What do you think here, Phil? Eagles, Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. I think that more so the pressure here is on the Chiefs to not go 0-2 than to just, make this a revenge type of a game here. So I think that the pressure is up there, and this is going to be a big game for Patrick Mahomes. What kind of ice are in your veins here? Unfortunately, I just, the way that this Eagles front seven just pummeled them last year. I mean, I think 6 sacks in the Super Bowl, most in his career in a game. The Eagles or the Chiefs didn't get the ball past midfield until the third quarter. I mean, there's just all this evidence building up on these guys. But you know what, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden the Chiefs and Andy Reid just, scheme them up a little bit more. But you know what, I think the Eagles just overall are a better team. You know what, you're right. I don't think I'm laying more than a point here. I think the Chiefs. I don't know, man. I mean, it seems like a pick 'em here. 47 seems a little bit high. I think this could be a little bit more defensive than what we think, especially with Xavier Worthy's out, correct? He is for
He's
sure
likely out. Yeah.
Likely,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, so you know what? I'm leaning under here, and I think the Eagles go in there and win.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get a quick update. I'm pretty sure the last I checked there with the updates for Kansas City was that he was likely going to have a hard time being in the lineup here and be available for this particular game. So, like I said, big concerns that would be obviously for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, questionable, but right now the early week prognosis is the fact he's not practicing, not a good sign. And again, they need Marquise Brown to stop dropping passes. Juju Smith-Schuster's got to find something. Like, there's big questions about that receiver.
There are.
No question about that. All right, Sunday night football, Atlanta, Minnesota. Minnesota 3.5-point home favorites, 44.5 the total in this game. Money's come in on Atlanta, and some of it's mine. I like Atlanta in this spot. Plus points, tough loss against Tampa. Young Oku misses the kick at the end. It was a pretty even game between them and the Bucs. Falcons on the losing end of it. Minnesota, great comeback against Chicago in the fourth quarter, but let's not forget they were pretty much ass on offense for 3 quarters of that game. Defense played really well as the game went on. But I think in this spot, short week after a big Monday night comeback win, they were laying upwards of 5 at one point, now 3.5. I think there was value on the Falcons, and I expect a close game. So I still like Atlanta above 3. What do you think here?
You know what? I think the Vikings defense are going to come in there and put a stop to the Falcons offense. I think this Vikings defense, I think the Bears offense showed a little bit more than the Falcons offense did, last Sunday. But I believe in Brian Flores at this point, and I believe in Kevin O'Connell. I think that's where I'm hanging my hat on here. 3.5 is a little bit high. I could see this being close, but you know what? I do think that the Falcons will at least put up some points here. I expect this to be like a 17-10 25-ish type of a game here. So right there. But you know what? I think I'm leaning Vikings here -3.5.
Yeah, Penix was efficient. It was pretty solid, but wasn't great,
Yeah,
but was solid. They couldn't
right.
run the football, though, against Tampa, and that's definitely – and I
Yeah,
got to admit, even though I'm on Atlanta plus the points, this is a coaching advantage for Minnesota. I mean, I'll
right.
take Kevin O'Connell in a heartbeat over Raheem Morris, not my favorite coach, as you know. When
Right.
it comes to that. Speaking of not one of my favorite coaches, Mr. Emotionless, Todd Bowles, the first of a Monday night doubleheader, Tampa Bay, Houston. Houston 2.5-point home favorites, 42.5 the total. We're tight on time, so I'll just be quick. Houston -2.5. I like Houston in this spot. Tough loss against the Rams out on the West Coast. Tampa Bay, down to the wire, barn burner. They pull it out at the end against Atlanta. Now they're going on the road for a second straight week. That's never an easy spot. I think Houston at home. I loved what I saw from the Houston defense. I know their offense, CJ Stroud and company, struggled against the Rams, but I really loved that defense and the way they played. And I think at home they can do enough offensively to get across the finish line and win and cover. So less than a field goal. I like Houston in this spot. What do you think? Bucks, Texans.
I agree actually on this one as well. I think the Texans offensively are going to have a bounce back game. Love what the Texans did on defense, but I think Baker Mayfield's a gamer. Ekbuka looks really good. Buccaneers can move the ball. I expect an over here, but I do think the Texans are going to win as well. So I would go over 42.5 and Texans -2.5.
And the last game, which is the second Monday night game coming up in week 2, I was going to say Battle of LA. Lost, it's not, though. Los Angeles Chargers, Las Vegas. Loss. Loss with an O, loss with an A, throwing me off. Los Angeles Chargers, Las Vegas Raiders. Chargers 3.5-point road favorites, 46.5 the total in this game. I really liked what I saw from the Chargers. I'm very reluctant to step in front of them. That being said, Raiders home opener, first home game for Pete Carroll. They look pretty solid in their opener against New England. Geno Smith was pretty solid in that game. They're a home underdog. This is a difficult spot for the Chargers. They got to come all the way back home from Sao Paulo, Brazil, jet lag, time zone travel, all that stuff. Now, the benefit is it's not till late Monday night. They've got some time to recharge their batteries, but it's still a tough turnaround going from playing in Brazil to playing this game on Monday Night Football. The Chargers travel was ridiculous. I think they had to spend like 12 hours, 11 hours getting to Brazil from LA based on their itinerary. So not an easy spot. I do think they're the better team, the Chargers, slightly, and deserve to be favored, but I'm worried about the situationals here. And the Raiders, I think I kind of lean them as a home dog, although I'm not rushing to step in front of the Chargers. Maybe an over here in this game. I think both offenses indoors could do enough here to maybe get up and over that total. Herbert versus Geno Smith. What do you think here, Phil? Chargers, Raiders.
I actually see this one being a little bit more defensive than what we're expecting here. I didn't like the way that the Raiders ran the football. I like Jim Harbaugh's defense here. I thought that they did a really good job against KC last week. It was a little bit of a weird game, obviously being in Brazil, but and I'm not stepping in front of the Chargers here. I think the Chargers handle this one from the line of scrimmage. I think they're able to run the ball, control the line of scrimmage, which is going to put the Raiders in fits here. So I'm leaning it under, and I think the Chargers win by more than -3.5. I think this is a pretty nice discount here for the Chargers. I think the Chargers win this one by 7.
And don't forget, Brock Bowers banged up his knee last week against the Patriots, so questionable. And obviously, great tight end, so keep an eye on that injury for the Raiders. Yeah, I hate the situationals and the scheduling spot for the Chargers, but you're right. I'm not like, that's just a lean, people, with the Raiders. I am not anxious to bet against the Chargers after what I saw against the Chiefs. They looked really good.
Yeah.
So maybe we put that on the back burner. Great stuff from Philip Nelson. Great show as usual. We did have a little interruption as I got knocked out due to a power surge, but we're back. We finished the show, and it was a great show as always. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hit the like button. Best bets to wrap up the show. Week 2 best bet, Philip. Congratulations. Last week, Arizona. Casses a ticket for you.
1-0.
1-0 to start the year for you. What do you like here for your week 2 best bet?
You know what? I think, like I said before, I really think that this is a bounce back game for the Bengals. I think that the Jacksonville defense is going to have some fits with this Bengals receiving core. I think Joe Burrow is going to bounce back. I really like team total for the Bengals over 26.5, like you said before. It was 26.5, right?
Yeah, 26.5.
26 and a half. I think the Bengals bounce back and have a big game there. I think the Bengals team total over 26 and a half.
All right, Cincinnati Bengals team total over 26.5 for Philip Nelson, his best bet for NFL Week 2. My best bet, I'm just fading the Dolphins as favorites. I think they were that bad. I do not trust them. I think it was that bad. I'll give me Vrabel over McDaniel. Give me Drake May over Tua right now. Tua looked lost. That was absolutely the offensive line stunk, but when he did have an opportunity to make plays in the passing game, he didn't get the job done. So I think New England here in this spot, that is how negative I've become on Miami, that I think New England can actually go in there and win that game. So New England Patriots plus 1.5 against Miami for my best bet here for Week 2 in the NFL. A great show. Philip, great stuff. Any last words before we sign off?
Nope. Another big Week 2. I think Thursday night, we're going to have a really good one. And on top of it, it's my birthday. I get to watch the Packers, Commanders.
Nice birthday.
Be a really good one. Really excited for Chiefs Eagles too. My wife's from Philadelphia, so we're going to be watching that one as well. So another good week this week. So we'll see you next week.
No doubt. Great show as always. Thanks to Philip. We'll see him again next week for Week 3. For Philip Nelson, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been your NFL Week 2 edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. We'll see you next week, and thanks for watching another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.